Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. And let's be honest, some days we've all been a bit of a dumpster fire. Joining us inside the Bachelor Pad this week is Philip Quinones. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about you and your journey?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me, Josh. I, right now, am a mental health therapist and a mental health coach. And my journey started off by really kind of just having NBA dreams, wanting to be that kid to play alongside the LeBron James and the Kobe Bryants. And so I made that pretty much my journey as a kid, pretty much by middle school. And then as I performed in high school, I knew that basketball wouldn't really be my calling, and I actually started to lose a passion for it. But at the end of the day, I've always been to really good schools, and I've always been a person that has utilized the ability to use his brain. So school has been very easy for me and easy going. And so luckily, I finished school in high school with an associate's along with my high school diploma. So I was taking college level credits. And then eventually I went to Georgia State for undergrad and changed my major about three times and then graduated in 2019. And then if you do or do not know, you can't do anything with an undergraduate degree in psychology. So I had to do an audit of myself. And I asked myself, what would I do day in and day out that if I wasn't being paid for it, I would still do? Where does it align with my values? What would be financially beneficial in the long term? And how does it align with my personality and what I get fulfilled from? And I've always enjoyed really meaningful conversations. I'm really bad at small talk. I'm really bad socially as well. And I prefer one on one things. I prefer things that matter. And people have been drawn to me to share really, really deep and hurtful things that they've been through. And being a safe space for them to not necessarily judge them for those things, but just allow them to speak about those experiences with me brought me comfort. It felt like I actually made a difference in those conversations. And so to me, that sounded like a therapist. So that was never on my radar. And now I eventually ended up as one. So I went and got my master's at Burnout University in clinical counseling psychology. And now I've been in the field for about a year now, working towards my own independent licensure, but working from different types of businesses and then growing my own personal business for mental health coaching. So that's where we're at right now, Josh.
I mean, that's a story that I think is all too common, especially in our culture. I can relate to that as somebody who changed their major three, maybe four times as well. And I also have a bachelor's in psychology that
Okay.
I couldn't do anything with. I'm glad that you were able to do that. And it's a space that a lot of people need, especially now, coming out of COVID or while you were in COVID, a lot of people really started struggling or were forced to face all their difficulties around how to handle relationships, interactions, even just kind of mediating themselves.
Right. No, absolutely. COVID exposed what was already there and is there. So if people didn't know, one out of eight people on earth have or will have a mental health issue within their lifetime. And that is a lot of people. And those are people that we can just account for. So that means that when you go out into the world and you are having these personal experiences with people, not only are you living your life through your own perspective and your own subjective experience, but it's very helpful to understand what's happening outside of you. And understanding people more objectively puts more openness to understanding what is really going on in somebody's life and how is that affecting them. And then because you can understand that, you then allow yourself to experience what you are going through because now it's not just about, oh, I'm just going through this without any type of knowledge of what somebody else may be going through, but because I am aware of this, because I am informed of this, I can now manage myself a little bit better around people. So it could be relationships with people, it could be how you navigate your job, it could be the macro of what's happening in the world at the bigger level. Because you're more well and more informed about it, you yourself can respond and navigate differently through it.
Like you were saying, it's also a field that no matter how long you stay into it, it's always evolving, it's always changing.
Yeah, always.
we're so complex yet so similar. And those little similarities, imperfections are what make us beautiful creatures. Now, over the past few years, have you predominantly worked more with individuals, groups of people? Like what would you say is your specific niche, or have you even decided on what you want to focus on in this space?
Yeah, so throughout the program itself, you get a variety of different types of clients, which is great. So you're dealing with individuals, families, couples, and you're doing groups as well. And so the most common issues that most people come to therapy for, and the most common psychological issues would be anxiety, trauma, and depression. So those are the most common three psychological disorders that we would diagnose as a professional. So you would see that from individuals and groups and families and couples. But for myself, I find myself being drawn more to understanding more relationships. I personally have had a lot of experience with that. I personally like the dynamic that I have when I have worked with couples because even though it's two individuals that are having issues with each other, it's kind of like the relationship itself is a third client because you're navigating an even more complex situation with people. And even though you are addressing some type of mental health disparity between the two people, it's kind of like it's not as symptomatic within itself. Whereas if I had a client that was more PTSD or borderline personality or DID, those type of things, that is a lot of symptoms we have to manage. And so I find myself really being drawn to the symptoms of the relationship more than anything, where I look at two individuals and what are the symptoms that the relationship is suffering from. And that to me has been something that I get more excited about and more passionate about, and even really created a lot of courses and a lot of books that I just published on marriage counseling and couples counseling and communication styles. I think I see myself doing that more often than not. And then in my coaching business personally, I believe that I'm narrowing down my niche a lot. And I think I really do want to focus on the disparities within women. So I'm really focusing on single women between the ages of 25 to 45 because I'm not only preparing for what's happening right now in the mating department and relationship department, but I'm wanting to be a profound expert in the next 20 years. And there is a strong disparity that is going to be happening for these single women within the next 20 years. And I want to be the person that people go to that will be well versed in helping many types of clients and many types of women go through those problems and help better them in that type of sense. So I think that's kind of where my niche is. But you never know how life could change and what can happen. It could be a new thing that comes up. But for right now, I think I see myself really enjoying that space.
I mean, the beautiful thing about psychology to me, it always reminds me of the phrase, a jack of all trade, a master of none. Because as much as we say we want to focus on this one aspect, facet of psychology, it's dominoes. One thing goes into another. You very rarely encounter anything in isolation. There are always multiple symptoms or stimulants that cause any issue that somebody's having. So I do hope that in 10, 20 years that you have reached the level of mastery that you want in the field. But I also hope that, you find new passions that still intrigue you about it as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And relationships are going to change. Dating is going to change in and of itself. I mean, it changed when new technology presented itself. I'm
Yeah.
starting with, the Match.coms and the Christian Mingles, and then Tinder, and then Bumble, and then BOK, and then Hinge, and those type of things. Dating is very different. Mating is very different. Medical technology is very different compared to what it was. And so dynamics of relationships. It's not just about monogamy anymore. It's not just about marrying because of religious purposes or culture. Now there are groups of people in relationships. There is diversity in sexuality, diversity in genders that have been showing up from people for the last five years or so. And so those are things or confounds that you have to take into consideration when it comes to relationships. So we might think of man and woman when we do relationship counseling or man on man and woman on woman, But now it might be three people, it might be four people that are coming into my office. And so I got to make sure that when I have my office, I have a bigger couch. So
Yeah.
everybody can kind of be comfortable with in the setting, but that dynamic is going to be different. Imagine if you had a therapist that again accepted that, understood that, and is intellectually stimulated by the problems that relationship has. And so trust, it can get very dicey with two people. So I can imagine three, and I can imagine four or more. And so that is here, that is coming, that's going to be more apparent and more acceptable. And like you said, be open minded to a lot of things. And again, you're still working with individuals within that relationship. And so, it's so much complexity, but it's stimulating at the same time. And I would want my clients to really know that whatever they decide, I don't judge or I accept, like, okay, this is dynamic. And one thing, most scientists who are worth their salt are very good at not knowing the answer. So I'm very good at telling clients when I don't know something, explain it to me. Like, what is that? I don't care if it's a new word. You may know another therapy thing that I don't. I don't know everything. And so that's the beauty about doing therapy, is that you give a space to a person to tell somebody else who they are and what they go through. Because I actually really don't know. I don't know. And I don't assume, I don't make guesses. I ask you. And sometimes people have a hard time experiencing somebody who would take the time to ask them a question, because those are probably the answers that they're trying to figure out for themselves. So it's a very fun profession. It'll keep you on your toes. Again, I'm still a novice in this field. And so, I'm just soaking it all in and then preparing for what's coming.
Before we get too into relationship talk, because obviously that's what we do here in the Bachelor Pad,
Yeah, yeah.
I have to say that I love that you brought up the point of the bigger couch, because that's really true. A lot of people, when they hear couples or partners counseling, they assumed that you have to fill the couch out, that it's always group work, but it's not. You brought up the point that they're still individuals, and even the relationship in itself has an identity, has a life, has breath. So I love that you're taking the time and you're already ahead of the curve of some other people, knowing that relationships have identity and that you have to work on each individual component in order to not just fix, but to sustain that entire relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a really good point, because what I describe it as to clients is you're building a culture. And people think culture is Day of the Dead for Hispanic people or gay pride for gay people. And I'm just saying things that come to mind, or Black History Month for Black people, whatever the case may be. People think of culture that way. But culture is anything that you're really associating yourself with a group of people. So you have sneaker culture, you have anime culture, you have watch culture, you have cologne, you have high end fashion, you have cars. So what happens is that people overlook that culture is a big influence on where you come to another person as an individual. And so it is like a Venn diagram where you have your own culture, your beliefs, your religion, your experience, your own mental trials and tribulations, education, money, all of these things. And you are combining that with somebody else. And so now it's the question of, what are you guys going to do in the middle? And what's great about this relationship is that it is the most vulnerable that you could experience with another human being. It is going to bring out what you need to work on and what you need to improve on. And so instead of kind of looking at it as a problem, it's more of an opportunity. If we have made the commitment to say, no matter what happens, the only way this relationship fails is if you leave. If you commit to somebody and say, no matter what it is, we are not going to leave, I promise you, if you put effort and spirit and vulnerability, blood, sweat, and tears into improving a roadblock as you come with another person, I promise you, you can get through anything else, because nothing new is under the sun. Nothing. Like literally what you have been through or what you have issues with, somebody has solved that problem before and has gotten through it. But the difference is that they have chosen somebody else, not necessarily themselves. So a relationship is in service of somebody else. So culture really matters because maybe the way that you communicated in your culture is very different than how communication is with another culture. And that is not something that you need to be assumed of. Like you need to speak how I speak or attend to my emotional needs the way that I attend to my emotional needs. No, it is a skill. A relationship is a skill, and it's not taught in school like math, science, history, and reading. It is something you have to learn by being in the game and in the experience with another person. And trust me, even the best of the best are still learning. And that's what's the beauty of it. Even if you make it to 80, 90 years old with a significant person, you still don't know yourself fully. And you may be different at 90 than you were when you were 30, 40, 50 years old. And that's the beauty of it. You're going through change with another person. And that comes with ups and downs. And it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Don't assume that you are going to have you're supposed if you don't, that's a problem. That's an actual problem. If you don't have problems, that's an actual problem for couples. Like it really is. So I take all that into consideration when it comes to trying to help a couple navigate, just a kind of a roadblock with what's happening. And it can be some very deep stuff. But people overestimate that if you create a space for people and you both actually most of the time want the same thing, we can work out the nooks and crannies of why it's hard to understand and accept the other person and their experience. But, some couples make that and some couples don't. And that's not my job to determine that. I'm just here to help and facilitate what I can.
That is so true. We've said this time and time again on the show that the role of the therapist, that the role of the coach is not to give you answers, it's to give you perspective. It's your job as an individual to start manifesting that main character energy, to hop off autopilot and start actually driving your life into the things that you want. I would be doing a disservice to the name of the show if I didn't ask. We ask everybody. The Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. Currently, what is your relationship status? Because I think that it also gives a lot of perspective to your viewpoint when you are working with clients, because the perspective of a single person is different than that of a married person or somebody who's been partnered for years. So I always think it's an interesting conversation piece.
I can agree and disagree with that. Not necessarily you, but people's perspective of that. So for me, right now in this moment, I'm currently single. And I personally messed up my last relationship because I brought in things from my previous relationship before that as I was going through that relationship. And ended up hurting a really good person. And with that being said, what makes a good therapist, or I guess the ability to be a good moral person, is that you have to have the ability to have a choice to do bad. And so, what a lot of people don't understand is it's really hard to trust somebody who has never admitted to another person that they've done wrong. A virtue cannot be a virtue without a choice to do bad. So whether it's stealing, whether it's hurting verbally or physically, whether it's infidelity, you have to have a choice in order to be virtuous. So what actually makes to me a good person is that they choose to be good because they acknowledge the bad. When it comes to why I said I disagree with the relationship perspective, is because you are practicing a social concept. They actually don't exist. They're a concept. A wife and husband and marriage is a concept. Boyfriend and girlfriend is a concept. Dating is a concept. It's not real. It just helps us organize things. If not, we would be like any other animal that if I see that and I have the ability to mate and reproduce, I'm going after that. They don't have concepts. So what happens is people get so tied up to concepts and the comfortability of those concepts that they don't understand how to do the concept. So you can be a wife or a husband, and you can have a ring, but you don't do wife or husband duties. You don't really know what that entails. And so you may get somebody who may be legally married, but they don't have a good relationship, whereas somebody who's in the dating phase and boyfriend and girlfriend do really well. So, and it could be opposite. So something isn't guaranteed just because you participate in the concept. You have to do the concept. That's like somebody saying that I voted for you to be president, but you don't do presidential stuff. That's the same thing. Like just because you got the PRES in front of your name doesn't necessarily make you presidential. You have to behave, act, respond, deal, manage with what that title brings. And so don't think that just because somebody has a concept of what it may be like or their relationship status is a certain type of way, that that correlates or predicts that they would be a formidable partner for you or for somebody else. It doesn't necessarily equate to that. Because I know maybe the most single guys that are super loyal, and then I know some of the most married women that are super promiscuous. And it's kind of like it's super opposite. So just like how we were talking about the dynamics of relationships change, there's so much access to reproduction. There's so much access to people. There's so much different types of behaviors that are changing socially and psychologically that just because those concepts have been foundational for a while in our evolution in our social behavior doesn't equate to those people still following it to the T the same way. I know a lot of people with open marriages. I know a lot of people that are being promiscuous. I know a lot of people that are married that have a boyfriend or girlfriend on the side. I know people that are super single but never date anybody. I know people that are still virgins at 25 years old. Like I know all many different types of people. And so even if you're getting my perspective, understand the history of Philip. Philip has been the most vulnerable, caring, gentleman, charismatic, thoughtful person to a girl. I've also been an asshole having rosters as a person. I've been monogamous. I've slept with multiple people at the same time, in the same day, in the same week, like multiple times. I have been cheated on and I've done the cheating. So what happens is all of those are learned experiences to bring to the table for me to say, hey, this is what I was,
Mhm.
and I, like anybody in the world, have the ability to change. So what's more important is that I choose to be the things that you would like within our culture, within this relationship. So if you don't like those things and you don't want to participate in those things, then now I'm being very transparent and open with you. But we kind of shut that down because we're so, again, worried about the social concept of something and how we think it's supposed to be, that that is why we can't hold on to relationships. Because if I don't like something minuscule or something tangible about somebody, then I don't want them and they're not good and they're not good people. No, you're probably missing out on great people because we're imperfect and we're gonna be imperfect. And everybody has a past before they met you. Can't, it's not a browser history. They can't just erase it. Like that's what it is. Psychologically, socially, mentally, all of those type of things. So I'm not disagreeing with you when it says, hey, different perspectives because of different relationship statuses. But I just wanted to add that and talk about that a lot within these type of settings and in a professional settings to get people to be more open minded about those type of things.
And this is one of the beautiful things that I love about dialogue, not debate, is there's so many interpretations and there are multiple perspectives. One is not more correct than the other. Your perspective is your perspective, and it just helps you update your operating system. I'm going to kind of touch on some of the topics you talked about because we're going to get personal today. I'm definitely going to ask some questions about my friends. I feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall because obviously my perspective isn't hitting for them.
Let's
So
go.
I'm going to get yours. But first, I want to ask you: you've worked with couples, you've worked with individuals. What would you say is probably one of the most underrated tools to strengthening a bond in a relationship or just fostering a relationship?
Great question. Great, great question. Very simply put, it's not about you. It is not about you. And that is very hard because we have free will, we have free speech, we are only a vessel within ourselves when it comes to other people. We have an instinct to take care of people. We have an instinct to produce with people. That means that you could not be here, even speaking to me, without another person, probably a woman, unless you just magically came from the sky. So we could not be here without each other. We take care of each other. We're not like some animals that within a week or so, they kind of just kick their spawn out of the nest and say, hey, you better fly or you die. We're not like that. It takes a long time to get another human being to be self sufficient. And no matter what, as I guess a good parent with their salt would say, my job is still not over until I pass away. So we have to understand that to build a relationship with people in any facet, platonic, romantic, professional, all those type of things, it's not about you. Yes, your feelings are valid. That doesn't make them right. That doesn't make them useful. Yes, your perception is yours. It doesn't mean that it's helpful when it comes to trying to connect with another person. Yes, you want to win the battle. You want to be right. You want to identify things as right, wrong, correct, incorrect, important, not important, bad, good. But is it for the sake of your own want to make yourself feel that you are validated, or is it going to be a disservice towards somebody else? And I promise you, if people start making things about the other person, how they feel, what they think, what they see, their experience, you would have a formidable relationship. You will have a space to talk about you and experience you. And yes, you matters. But I promise you, if you put them before you and say, no, I would rather risk being wrong than give up this relationship. I would rather deal with my negative feelings alone than perpetuate that on somebody else, because then they're just beaten up. They're disconnected. They're scared. They're traumatized. They're angry and upset. Most of the things that you probably do, you can probably manage yourself. You don't have to put that on somebody else. So again, just like these different type of cultures that we're trying to bring together into one, what is my input in that relationship that is causing this issue, that is maybe keeping me away from really having that connection with somebody? And so it just gets down to the bottom line of it's not about you.
That's ironically so true. I think we've all gotten a little more narcissistic in the age of social media. Not narcissistic, egocentric is a better word. We present our ego, it's all over Instagram. We're consuming so much that it's like, well, I get this many likes, this many people agree with me. We really put ourselves at the forefront. So I think it's shown because relationships aren't really sustaining as much as they did in the times of our parents or grandparents simply because of that. So I love that you said that it's not about you, that you really have to take the time to put the other person's needs first because it will follow. Being a partner, that's part of what it is not just doing your share, but assisting, helping when needed. So I love that. And it kind of brought me to another question that I had that spun off of that. In your opinion, what could potentially be more detrimental in a relationship? Conflict avoidance or the fake positivity that everything's okay? You know? Because a lot of people, they want to post these snapshots of their relationships on Facebook, Instagram, wherever. And they're like, oh, there's such relationship goals. We're like the perfect couple. We're so in love. I was like, really? Are you? Like you said, not having problems is a problem.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think people need to not necessarily do their own work, but understand themselves very well. And again, it gets back to just because my style and my experience and my perceptions and my opinions of things are my opinions and they are valid, doesn't mean that they're really useful in a relationship with another person. Understand how maybe how somebody else operates is just, or if not, more important than how you operate. And so, how you have discourse may be different. How you verbalize your negative feelings may be different. How you cope with situations may be different. How you have a vice to deal with stress is different. how you respond to really big life events is it can be very different. And so the point of being able to work through those things is again making sure that it's about the other person and not you. And what it means is that you have to be very vulnerable. What's so hard about vulnerability is that not a lot of people have, no, I'm not saying that because that's a very big judgmental, not judgmental, but a big, let me catch myself. It is a hope that you have been able to experience unconditional love from hopefully your parents or the people that were around you. So that way, when you go out into the world, everything else is a plus, even the partner that you are choosing. And so that could mean that I know that everything that I'm experiencing with all these other people are an added bonus to what my foundation already is. But if I don't go in there having that experience already, I then find ways to cope with those type of things. And that could be passive aggressiveness. That could be passiveness and that could be aggression in and of itself. It could be a mask or a facade of how you want things to be. And the thing that I'm pictured when you said that is that you have a clown looking in the mirror, and the mirror is, happy and go lucky, but behind that mask and behind that makeup is a lot of sadness and a lot of hurt. And so when you're working with another person, another complex human being, again, who has been having experiences before they met you need to understand how to look at it through that perspective and say to somebody and create a space for somebody to say, you can take off the mask. It's not about being masculine or feminine or anything in between. It's not about the tangible things of education and SES and your height and your body shape or the size of your genitals or your reputation, your education, whatever the case may be. But it's about when you come home to this very dangerous world that if we didn't have this type of infrastructure would eat you alive and would be very dangerous for people and other animals and forms of life. In this space, I want to create the most vulnerable space for you. I want you to be able to lay your head and know that I can just let go in dialogue and the things that I go through individually, in the nakedness of my human experience. And a relationship in any type of facet with that will show that. And if you do have that, you can work through those type of things. You don't have to be aggressive with me. Truth does not have to be violent and loud. Vulnerability does not have to be forced or intended with uh, brutality towards somebody to be truth. It's truth. It can be silent. It can be normal. It could be solid in how we go about that together. So it doesn't have to be passive. It doesn't have to be passive aggressive, and it doesn't have to be aggressive. So I would want people to understand that.
Yeah, I love that you said that because one thing that I use in my personal life and I tell my clients too is if my truth makes you defensive, what does that tell you?
Yes, absolutely. You're right.
Like I said, I feel like that statement doesn't make it just solely about myself or yourself, so to speak, because your truth, your perspective is valid and should be heard. It should be considered. But how I feel is how I feel. If you have an involuntary, over passionate or defensive response to it, that should tell you that hey, there maybe why does that stimulate me like that? What
Yeah.
work do I potentially need to do so that I can keep my partner first? That so that I can keep this open dialogue because a lot of the times when so you hit a nerve, so to speak, with a certain bit of truth, dialogue breaks down, and that's where you can start to see little dips or declines in certain relationships. I feel.
No, absolutely. And I think with a tool that we use in therapy, in which getting a $50,000 education in the master's, pretty much this is probably the best tool that I've been given. And that is understanding the stages of change. And you can apply the stages of change with any aspect of your life. And those stages are pre contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And what a lot of people don't understand is where they are in whatever facet of their life within that change stage. Because you may not think that you have a problem. You may not think that it's an issue. because you're pre-contemplating and not really thinking that something needs to change. But when you get to contemplation and preparation, you're spending the time knowing that you need to change something. So life gives you the things that it was meant to give you, whether you asked for them or it was warranted or not. And so if you find yourself reacting instead of responding to something, that reaction is not going to go away. It is going to be there. It is going to keep showing up, and it's probably going to get in a higher intensity because usually the more you go through life, the higher at stake of something and risk you are taking. So it's going to be more at risk until you learn the lesson. So if you are reacting to something most of the time and you find yourself not responding, then you're probably needing to change something. But sometimes it really is okay, even with clients, that life is going to push you down until you can't bear anymore and you are forced to change. And I've done that with mandated clients where it's like, bro, you're 16, 17 years old and life is giving you an opportunity, bro, like to change right now. But sometimes some of them make another mistake and now they are screwed for a long period of time. And maybe in the 20 years that now they're going to the big boy house, that is forcing them to change, hopefully. Sometimes it has to be like, hey, bro, you being a player or you taking advantage of women or whatever the case may be, you're going to lose out on a good girl. And it may be like, dang, out of all these people, I had one person that really liked me, and losing that was the worst thing that probably happened to me. And it could be that you married her and you still had your vices and whatever the case may be. So you have to change. Life may compress you and give you those challenges, but learn them now. Experience them now where you don't have as much risk compared to when you're getting older in different facets. So understanding where you are on that change scale is very vital. And I ask clients with that in other facets of their life too, not just the psychological and relationship, but any other facet. If you are understanding that people as well that you're in a relationship with are pointing out the same damn thing, it's probably something you need to look at. If you keep getting called I hate the fad word because it's so annoying. Trauma, depression, anxiety, and narcissistic are like my pet peeve words in the social media age, as a professional. So, but I will say, if you keep getting called a narcissistic person or a B word or manipulative, rude, inconsiderate, defensive, loud, or any of those things that people point out with you, and multiple people have given you that answer or that feedback, there's probably some truth in that. There really is for me and everybody else. So it's kind of like, well, how much is it going to take for you to change? And that's not up to me. But I know when you come to my office, I didn't call you. So you actually unconsciously or consciously, depending on where you're on that change scale, want to change something.
Oh, for sure.
That is an unconscious thing right then and there. So it's helpful that people come to me, but then I also use that tool with people in my life. Like they're not changing. They don't want to. They don't see a problem, and I can't change anybody. And so they can only do that upon their own authenticity to themselves if they want to change or not. But that doesn't mean that other people may be around for that. At some point in time, maybe it doesn't work out for you in the long term.
Consequences, we all have to live with them. We can't escape them. You make your bed, what you got to do? You got to lie in it.
Absolutely.
And so often people try to wait to go to counseling or therapy or seek coaching as a last resort. I always say this. I was like, you really shouldn't be reactive in life. We've kind of been talking about this. You have to start, in some aspects, you have to start being proactive. Everybody or every other person you talk to is calling you one of those trigger words, egotistical, you know,
Self.
any of those words or if enough people are calling you anything that you don't resonate with, maybe you need to take a moment and proactive be like, maybe it's time for me to do some work.
Yes.
Because for this many people, especially, I feel like it hits different when it's not a person who necessarily knows you the best. It's like those acquaintance level people, circle of people, because they don't know all your deep, dark secrets or necessarily everything you're going through, but this isn't their first time interacting with. So you've displayed a behavior enough for people who see you on a average or frequent basis to be like, nah, fam, like you're being a bit dickish,
Right.
you know?
You're pointing out that behavior, but I think you mentioned something really brilliantly in the earlier of this conversation where you said, well, you have your circle and the algorithm and media perpetuating that that's not a problem. You have people with similar mindsets or perspectives or feelings or thoughts that they have expressed that confirm that nothing is wrong with you. But then when you step out off of that screen and you actually have to go and interact with other human beings, and you are getting this feedback on the experience that they have with you, whether it's a behavior or something verbal, if you are getting the same type of feedback, it's probably something you need to address. But again, the media is a coping mechanism. It's a strong coping mechanism with people because the algorithm does not care to do the opposite of what you want it to do. It doesn't say, hey, you're being narcissistic, so maybe you should listen to things about how not to be. No, it's going to find somebody with the same type of thoughts and communicates the same type of way that you do. And then you sit there and go, I don't have the problem. Everybody else was. I'm not being a dick. Everybody else is just soft and little punks. Like, no, like you really are a problem. But again, I may be able to voice that in my personal life, and I do that in my personal life very often when I don't see a behavior that I really appreciate, whether it's in my personal relationship with somebody or it's in a social setting in general. I'm pretty assertive with showing myself to that person and pointing that stuff out for somebody. One, because it's just within my own kind of will and spirit to do it, because again, if somebody didn't call it out, like you would just continue to be the same. And I may have enough tough skin and enough comfortability within myself to deal with you in this capacity, but maybe I don't want somebody else to deal with you. Maybe I don't want somebody else to experience such a negative behavior and a negative outcome with you. Maybe that's why you need to be pointing it out. But most of your friends are probably the same. Your media is probably the same. You probably have learned those traits from family members or growing up socializing with people. So you don't really see a need to change, which is unfortunate. But like you said, the kind of the rise of these types of people has always been there. It's just been able to be exposed now.
That's why I tell people you can't have multiple best friends because a true best friend is that friend who's going to look you in the eye or pop you upside the head and be like, I'm going to tell you that thing that you don't want to hear because I care. Not because it really does anything for me, but because I care about you. Whether it's your TikTok algorithm, the reels you're seeing on Instagram, even the friends you have across the internet, or sometimes in your day to day life,
Yes.
people don't really like to rock the boat too much.
Yes.
Okay? They like the status quo. They're okay with it. They want to make sure that you're happy because they think happy equals functional in a relationship. And that's not always true. You need waves. Okay, because like you said, a virtue isn't a virtue until it's tested. For
Yes.
me, a relationship isn't really a relationship or a solid one until it's tested. When you go through the mud with me, when you have those experiences, that builds stock, that builds trust. And I feel like a best friend or a parent, you know, your partner, those are the people who really get the opportunity or like keep you rising to the top, you know, and really hone in, at least on my circle. I was like, I don't need a whole big planet. I just need a small little fenced in space.
No, absolutely. And I think also the way that the system is set up for you, there are other people that do that too, because community matters when it comes to bringing up human beings. Again, we're not a single producing organism. We are a multiple producing organism. It takes two of us to produce because we're not asexual. And it also takes a community to raise us. And so in the difference in culture as well and why it's such a big influence is because the culture on the eastern side of the world understands the collectivistic perspective of bringing people together and have thousands of years of traditions of how to necessarily do things. Where on the western side of the world, the United States of America is the second most individualistic culture in the world. So it's about me, myself, and I, not we, us, and our. So there's a big difference, and that's why it's very challenging and why there's so much mental disparity on our side of the world is because you think that it's about you and only you. and your perspective and your thoughts and your feelings. But no, your teachers, your coaches, your parents, your neighbors, your preachers, your local community grandmother, all of those people are trying to hopefully indulge in a normal bring up of you from a moral standpoint to challenge you and say, stop being a knucklehead or stop acting this type of way. One is the pass down of wisdom and experience because you're going to do the exact same thing that somebody else has done before. That's one. And so they also know the consequences and the outcome of that. And even for myself, I have clients, again, who don't necessarily want to be and do therapy at this point in time. And I can't help those who don't want to help themselves. And if you don't want to change, fine, that's totally up to you. You're just going to have to deal with the consequences. So it is very unfortunate that you don't have parents that care about what you do. You don't have coaches to get up in you and challenge you to not um, think that it's only about you, but it's about the team. You don't have a teacher to say, hey, your performance is really poor right now. I know what you can do. You're just being really freaking lazy. Like you're not focused. And these groups of people are stopping you back. And you think that when you graduate, that they're going to keep in contact with you and they care about where you're trying to go. Like you can make it someplace and you can make something out of yourself. Or you get a romantic partner that is actually really challenging you and say, bro, like that communication is poor. That behavior is not helpful. That way of thinking is not conducive to having a formidable relationship. But you can just block them. You can just block them and ignore them and do whatever. So you don't think that you're a problem. And that person is like, no, they're controlling and they have a wrong opinion. And I don't like this type of guy and I don't like this type of girl. And it's like, no, bro, that's probably who you really need to be listening to instead of the people that are perpetuating the negative behavior that you're really doing out into the world. Because it's
People are
not.
scared of accountability.
Absolutely. That's huge. And I do that as a therapist. Like, I'm a very, not necessarily confrontational, but I would say confrontational because one, I am a man. That's one, because I'm a man in a very small field of men amongst white women, being less than 4% man and then 2% black. So, with that being said, you are getting a man's perspective. You are also getting the subjectiveness that is not about how you feel all the freaking time. Part of therapy is calling you out and saying, no, if I know this is where you're supposed to be and you start to do this, you're wasting my time. I don't care if you're paying me this amount of money, you're wasting my time because I care more about the purpose than the money that you're paying me for my service. I need you to be here. So I do challenge those type of things. I do challenge your thinking. And 99% of people that want to receive therapy stay with me. And there's a reason for that because like you said, it's coming from a place of love and care and empathy and it is wanting to know that I don't want you to continue where you've been. I want to see where we're going because I can't change what's happened to you. And if you think that I'm going to be dragged along, just like you drag along your followers and your friends and all those type of people, then you need to find another therapist. Like that's just not who I am. That's not who I am as a person. And I can't show up to a call with you, wasting an hour of my lifetime, perpetuating a behavior that you have come to me and wanting to change. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say, "Oh, come here and do whatever." I'll be like, "No, like I've really called that stuff out." And sometimes the best compliment that I've ever get, and I probably will continue to get, is Phil. I really hate and love you sometimes. I'm like, you know what? I did my job then. I really did my job because it's like, damn, he's really right about this, but I don't like it. But it works. And I tried it. And when I actually got off the call and I really thought about it, it was probably really helpful. So that's just the type of therapist role that I've moved in. But I do that personally and professionally.
Listen, I say that, I was like, you didn't come to me because you needed a hug. You came to me because you were ready to make a change.
Yes.
And I'm sorry it's not as pretty as you thought, but I think you'll like it at the end. Normally, we do the quickie questions, and it tells us a little bit more about you. But today, we've been talking about red flags, hot topic, trigger words. So I'm going to try something a little different. I want you to tell me if you think this is sustainable or not sustainable.
Okay,
If
sustainable or
you want
not.
to go into why, I'm here for it. But if not, you don't have to. Okay?
Sustainable or not sustainable.
Yes. And a certain person watching or listening, this is for you because I told you that I was going to ask him about this. You know who you are. So the first one, this is such a big thing for me. It drives me crazy how people do it, but we'll see if we're on the same mindset with it.
Right.
Okay, so what do you think about couples who are islands? And what I mean by that is no friends, no outside hobbies, just vibes and semi codependency.
Not sustainable at all. Boy, you're bringing in two lives. That doesn't mean lives stop. Like at all. You need your own friends, you need your own therapist, you need your own best friend, you need your own vices, you need your own job. You need to be a self-sufficient person as you bring together people. And it's very hard again to navigate doing things by yourself. We can't do anything really by ourselves. And again, life doesn't stop. Like you need to continue to grow as an individual. You're just sharing life with another person. But I think that's an extremely hard thing for another human being to bear is fulfilling roles that they did not sign up for. Like if they did not sign up for it, they have to probably manage it in some type of way. I have a my own controversy. Somebody being your boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or husband being your best friend. No, like, what are we gonna do? Get in an argument and then go in a different room together and be like, let me tell you what this person did. No, you need to have a place to go bitch and moan and cry at a bar or at coffee or on a walk with somebody else. Like, you may not be able to solve the problem right then and there with your person, but you need to go someplace and do that. So, if you don't have that place, it's a very dangerous thing. And the more roles that another person has to do for themselves, the less they get to be in the relationship. So if I have to be, as a man, your father, your therapist, your friend, your coach, I don't get to be your significant other. So you need to fulfill those roles in other areas of your life outside of me because those are different types of relationships. So that's damn sure not sustainable.
I
It's not.
100% agree. This is
Yeah.
what I in relationships or I tell people I don't have friends as clients because that muddies the water. I can either be your coach or I can be your friend. I can
Yeah.
either be your partner or I can be your therapist. Can't be both. Question number two. Is this a red flag if a person doesn't have friends? Now, let me give context. We're still staying in this relationship space
All right.
and seeing how we were just talking about islands. If you are just starting to court somebody and you notice their profile pictures is usually just them, or we've been together for a little bit, but I know you like you talk about your coworkers, but you don't have friends. Sustainable, not sustainable.
It's in the middle. And let me tell you why it's in the middle. So I'm an only child to a single mother. And my mother had me at 36 or 37, right? So I had an older mom and a Caribbean mom. So I was not brought up, I was raised. So with being an only child and one of her last few eggs, I'm a very introverted person. Have literally, objectively, have had measurable less social interactions than the average person. Literally, just high and by oxygen to verbalization of a word or an actual experience with another person. Literally, I have and will have always been by myself for the rest of my life than I will be with another person. So, what does that say about Philip? I did not have friends like that. It was hard to gain friends. But I also craved good temperament for myself of an interaction with another person. And so, for the right person, again, there's opposites and pros and cons to something. If you have a person who hasn't had as much friends or social interactions or exchanges with people. What usually could happen is they understand themselves very, very well. Very, very well. Because literally all I have to do is have a conversation with myself. My thoughts are with myself. My feelings are with myself. I don't have to mask them. They're not intertwined when we're on the way back from getting ice cream and somebody was having a bad moment. I literally have been able to analyze myself for a very long period of time. So, with that being said, that's a very rare case. So, I'm not going to project that onto the world. But I will say that some people have different personalities. Very introverted people do, which is a true personality trait, do not crave interactions like that and do not crave to socialize like that in that extreme of an extroverted person. So my friendships may be associations. My friendships may be more quick exchanges. It may not be that we have meetups and have all these memories and photos of doing all these things together. So I don't necessarily think so. I think again, understanding the culture of somebody is important because maybe they did grow up in similarly that way and they just don't crave those type of things compared to the average person. So that's why I said it's not necessarily a red flag because if you look at my Instagram, how you described it, it's me. And actually, what was nice, a nice point that this girl mentioned one time that I tried to talk to, she said, when I look at your Instagram, I can tell that you have a lot of time for yourself. And I was like, you know what? That's
Yeah.
actually a really good statement because I never thought of it like that. Because she's like, yeah, I always got to attend to my sister and my mom. And she's like, no, you really have a lot of time to yourself. And I like how she put that, to be honest. And but again, if you're going to choose that type of person with less friends, you may have to compensate a little bit about being the person that they really kind of go to. And because they want you to be that person. They're just not gonna go really. They're not really going to go outside of you to do that. But again, that person has to come with. I can't be necessarily clingy because I need to have my own.
Yeah.
But then the other person has to accept that you can't change this person. So don't make them feel bad for being more introverted or more reserved. Don't make them feel bad or try to change them because you don't like when people try to change you if they were asking you the opposite questions of why you have so many friends and why do you go out so much. Don't try to change people. So I think that's I'm in the middle.
Yeah. I love the duality that you created there. And as somebody who's also, it's weird. I say I'm an only child, but I'm not.
Okay.
Me and all my siblings all have different moms, but
Okay. Gotcha.
so we grew up in different households, and different times apart. I get that whole my thoughts are my solace, and I'm hyper aware of myself and my actions. But
You're right.
also because I'm the baby of the bunch, I understand those interactions or needing to lean on people or having that network. So I love the duality you painted there. That I hope is a new perspective that not just the person that I asked this question for, but anybody who's listening, if it resonated, gave you a bit of closure. This is, to me, it's a no brainer, but a lot of people in relationships think this is a great foundation and is sustainable, that physical intimacy is a strong enough reason to get into a relationship slash stay. Sustainable, not sustainable.
I would say that one. I would say not sustainable. One because when you start hitting 50, my guy, you're gonna get ED. So trust me, at some point in time, that your soldier not gonna be working. And for women too, I don't necessarily know a lot about that part, but I'm pretty sure they don't get as lubricated as they once did when they were 20. So you have to really care about the character about and like the person that you're with. If you don't like them, you don't have to love them. Like I think some people get that confused too. Is these chemicals? Because I am a scientist. These chemicals that are going through your brain when you have that type of connection with a person that are going through your mind, you're infatuated and in love and aroused and all these type of things. Is not a sustainable way to connect with somebody, and it may, even though I'm very gray, it may not even be right to do that because maybe on one side you're more for the reproductive purposes, whereas somebody is more for the formidable long-term relationship outcome. So you're actually doing them a disservice because you want your cake, but you don't understand that they have cake too, and they may want something different. So finding somebody who meshes with that or believes those things type of things would be ideal for you in the long term. And so yes, sex, a practice of reproduction, is the only purpose it has. It is a coincidence that it is something that is pleasurable for us. So, but the main function is reproduction. So, for example, if I only was in a relationship for the purpose of reproduction, I can only do that once, pretty much every once a year, pretty much once a year, I can do that. So is that all it's supposed to be? Like, okay, I'll see you in 9 months and you stay in that room and I stay in this room and we just kind of go about our business until 9 months later you produce life. That's not really how it's supposed to be. So what happens within the other, average time is I think 5 to 7 minutes of sex. So what happens with all that much time outside of that? What are you doing with that person that is drawing you to them, that is sticking you to them? You have to care about their character, who they are. Do you like them? Do you laugh? Do you have experiences together? Do you have emotional intimacy? Do you have life shared experiences? So don't think that just because you may be in a stage where your hormones are at its highest, your body is at its strongest to produce and give life, that that means that that is sustainable for a long-term relationship. No, you need to know how to deal with negativity. You need to know how to do things when you don't feel like it. And then you have to make it about the other person and not yourself. Like you have to have a friendship. When again, you probably want to be with somebody that you like. If you don't like them, you don't have to love them every single day. But if you don't like them, it's not going to work. And you may like them for the 7 minutes that you're bumping and grounding. But if you don't like them outside of that, it is not going to last. So that's definitely unsustainable.
Listen, I could not be more on your side on that. I was excited for today's conversation because I thought you'd be a chill dude, which you are, and you're also really insightful, and you have that nice balance of I understand you, but I'm going to give you some tough love. So I really enjoyed today's conversation.
Yes, I'm here.
But this last one isn't sustainable, not sustainable. It's just a question that has kind of been brought up a few times to me that I just feel like asking. Can emotional intimacy exist without independence? If you can separate identities and you're just always together, can we really call that love? Is that really a relationship, or are we just obsessing over not being alone?
Okay, got you. You're obsessing on not being alone. Okay, cool. Well, I think what came to mind was it's love because you want to be there. It's love because you want to be connected to this person. You want to be drawn to them. And love, even though there's a chemical feeling and there's a chemical experience and chemical feeling that is happening within us, when that stuff dies down and those bars start to lower, just like kind of like a DJ at a rolling loud set, it just lowers a little bit. Love is a choice. So you have to want to choose the things that you do and the things that you want to experience with another person. And so I don't, if you're making the choice because you want to be there, because you like them being around you and being with them through the thick and thin, then it's not going to be considered some type of isolation and that I just don't want to be by myself. You actually really do want that. But if it's everything opposite of that, where again, you can't sit with yourself, you can't stand yourself, you don't know the ins and outs of your behaviors and your reactions towards the experiences that you're having with somebody. And so, in order to mask that, you just pull this body in order to deal with that. Then you are probably choosing somebody out of fear of being isolated or by yourself compared to choosing somebody that you authentically and generally really want to be around and really just want to have a good time with and go through the bad things that life is bringing and life is going to bring as you move forward. So I definitely understand that. If I'm noticing that people are using me to mask their isolation, and I can consciously understand that because I'm going home saying, I feel used. They only hit me up when they need something. They only want to be around me when it entertains them. You need to have a boundary around yourself to say, again, that is a reaction that you're having towards somebody else, but you yourself keep choosing to put yourself in that situation.
So thank you so much for once again just being authentic with us today. I know, I don't even think, I know a lot of people listening right now have definitely picked up at least one or two jewels that you have dropped. So before we get out of here, let the people know where they can find you, what you have coming up for the rest of the year.
So yeah, if anybody wants to get in contact with me, you can visit my website, pqcoachingandconsulting.com. So you can see all of my interviews there. You can see all the courses that I've created, all the books that I have published, and then my contact information is on there. So whether it's individual, whether it's couples, mental health coaching, or generally you just want to talk to me and inquire about me, just hit me up, and I would love to speak with you because I know if you're listening to Josh, you really have a lot of openness to wanting to grow yourself. And if I'm a part of that journey for you, then I'll be happy to do that. So pqcoachingconsulting.com is where you can find me and find everything that I'm trying to contribute to make the world a better place.
Guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. I will see all you beautiful partnered and unpartnered people next week for another new episode. Peace.
Peace.